In the 4th year of our marriage, the girl Leon missed in his youth came back. That night, he didn't come home. I stayed awake, from dusk until dawn, and finally, I felt mentally and physically exhausted. I started to become calm, not going crazy with jealousy, nor asking about the kiss marks on his neck. At first, Leon seemed very satisfied. He spent his days and nights with his first love, lost in romance, while I cooked and did the housework without asking or complaining. Soon, he came home in the middle of the night, looking strange. In a hoarse voice, he asked me, "Eliza, don't you care about me at all?" I softly asked, "Am I not good enough for you?" The room was dark, with no lights on, just the darkness surrounding us. I folded my hands behind my head, lying in the dark, trying to keep my eyes wide open, as if that would allow me to catch the moment he returned. The large room felt empty, except for the snowflakes gently falling outside the window, drifting down and lightly tapping against the glass. I slowly pulled my stiff hand out and reached for the space beside me. My fingers brushed against an empty void of loneliness. He hadn't come back. A few hours earlier, the news that Grace had returned spread like an explosion in our class group chat. As the most unmatched beauty of our high school, and from a prestigious family, Grace was flawless in every way. But it was said that she had suddenly given up her beloved job overseas and decided to return to China. When I saw this news, I instinctively looked at Leon. He was sitting on the couch, the dim light casting a blurry shadow on his upright profile. The light from his phone faintly illuminated his emotionless face. He seemed indifferent, tossing his phone aside carelessly. He pulled a book from the shelf but didn't turn a single page. After a long while, he put the book down and repeatedly checked his phone, seemingly fixated on the message in the group, "Grace is back." He took out a cigarette and lit it, the glow of the flame flickering faintly. After some time, he stubbed out the cigarette harshly, hurriedly grabbed a black jacket from the room, and left without a word. It felt like I was just a useless ornament in the room, no need to even look at, just waiting for him to return and bounce around when he finally came home. I reached for my phone again, almost absent-mindedly, intending to send him a message. I opened the conversation, only to realize I had already sent him many messages. "Leon, where did you go? Are you at work? When will you be home? I'm waiting for you." At first, they were calm, but as they went on, my messages grew more impatient, filled with uncontained suspicion and strong jealousy. "Are you ignoring me? Did you go to see her? You went to see Grace, didn't you? Come home now. You're not allowed to see her. You still can't forget her, can you? Don't lie to me, after all these years, you still can't let her go, can you?" Each word felt like a desperate, angry roar, like a mad lion wanting to drag him back home immediately. I stopped typing. He didn't reply. This was the first time in nearly 4 years of marriage that he hadn't replied to my messages for such a long time. He had promised me. He once told me, "Whatever message you send, I'll reply to you first as soon as I see it." But today, it wasn't like that anymore. I felt a heaviness in my chest, unable to sleep, my hands cold and numb. I don't know how long it was before a new profile picture appeared on my social media feed. I clicked on it, and it was Grace's post. It was her first time posting something on her social media. She posted a few pictures from a gathering, with the caption, "Thank you to everyone who came to welcome me back after all these years. My drinking skills are terrible, and I made a fool of myself." An invisible, large hand gripped my heart tightly, making it hard to breathe. I almost didn't want to open it, hesitating for a long time before finally clicking through the pictures. When I reached the 5th one, my finger froze. It seemed like a friend took the photo. In the picture, her face was flushed from the alcohol, leaning unsteadily on someone's shoulder. Her long, flowing hair cascaded beautifully in front of her. The person she was leaning on was not in the frame, but his hand was visible, long fingers, gently brushing aside her bangs with tenderness and care, as if to protect her. Time seemed to freeze in that moment. My gaze was glued to it for a long time before finally falling on the diamond ring on his finger. The ring that he had once placed on my hand, custom made with our ID numbers, a pair of expensive rings only two in the world, was now covered with a hazy mist of tears. Why had it become so dusty? I touched my face and realized that I had been crying without noticing. He had never let her go. I heard that they had known each other long before I came into the picture. Back then, Leon wasn't the influential figure he is now in the Beijing social scene. He was just a poor student. Grace was the only daughter of the benefactor who had supported him. It said that they broke up when they were young because they were too stubborn. It wasn't until the day he learned she was going abroad that he lost control and borrowed a friend's car to chase after her, but on the way, he accidentally ran into me. When he got out of the car, the cold wind swept around him, his thin shirt barely offering any warmth. As he carried me to the hospital, his fingers were ice cold and trembling. At that time, I only thought he was nervous and scared, but I didn't notice how his eyes kept darting around, as if searching for someone. It was as though he was afraid of missing someone. After all these years, Grace still looked like the precious young lady she once was, and Leon had long since become the prince of Beijing's elite circle. This reunion seemed so romantic and perfect. Only, I felt utterly insignificant. The diamond ring was no longer clear, and the words on my phone screen gradually blurred. The ache in my heart seemed to spread to my fingertips, causing them to throb painfully as well. I turned, dazed, and suddenly realized that it was already dawn. A ray of morning light lazily fell on me, gradually waking my mind, inch by inch. My phone had fallen to the floor. A ray of morning light lazily fell on me, gradually waking my mind, inch by inch. My phone had fallen to the floor. I suddenly realized something. I was just the supporting role in this world. Leon was the hero who had risen from rags to riches, and Grace was the wealthy heroine he had once missed and then reclaimed. And me? I was nothing but a character who spent her whole life competing with the heroine out of jealousy, ultimately harming her. In a fit of rage, Leon used his power to have me imprisoned, and I died a tragic death in the prison, a mere supporting character. I stood there, dazed for a long while, trying to come to terms with this sudden revelation in my mind. I left the house. The snow outside was still lightly falling, but I felt no coldness, my mind in disarray. From how Leon and I met and fell in love, to how everything had fallen apart now, like shattered pieces of glass scattered everywhere. As for my parents, they had been deeply in love all their lives, bringing each other happiness. I had once looked forward to a beautiful marriage, two souls who loved each other. But me? Had I really been happy since we got married? The many arguments we'd had over the years replayed in front of my eyes, like streetlights passing by. I saw myself, my eyes red with anger, filled with jealousy to the point of madness, and the days I spent living in constant fear, worried that Grace would appear. Fear, anxiety, exhaustion. I looked up at the snow, which had begun to slow down, and my heart slowly grew numb, yet strangely calm. I opened the door, and Leon had returned. He was taking off his black coat, casually hanging it on the hook. When he heard the door open, he turned around, his dark eyes looking at me. The kiss marks on his neck stabbed into my eyes, and my heart, as always, tightened, but the next moment, I felt an even deeper sense of calm. It was strange to know that, after exhausting my life trying to gain that unreachable love, I would ultimately end up with nothing, yet somehow, I felt so much calmer. What lingered in my heart was nothing but weariness and fatigue. I looked away, pretending not to see. Leon, however, spoke up, his voice low. "Where did you go?" I walked toward the kitchen. "I bought some breakfast." "Breakfast?" Leon paused. "You didn't go to see Grace?" So that was his worry. I closed the kitchen door, started preparing the food, and faintly heard Leon speaking from the other side. Grace came back to the country. Everyone just got together to catch up. After all, she did help me once. I didn't respond, picking up a bowl. Leon furrowed his brows, pulling off a button from his shirt, growing a little impatient. "How long are you going to keep making a scene? Are we going to do this Cold War thing again? Haven't we fought enough over the years?" Indeed, over the years, I had lived in a constant state of anxiety. The moment I sensed his concern for Grace, I would react like an electric shock, causing a scene, crying, and not letting up. "Eliza, talk to me." His voice grew colder. "Know your place? You can keep acting out like this, but if you're planning on causing trouble with Grace..." I opened the kitchen door. "The door is soundproof, I can't hear you." I brought the breakfast out, setting it on the table, looking at Leon's face, which suddenly stopped talking, and I curved my lips slightly. What would I want with her? I have my own things to do. I wouldn't have time to go look for her. I poked at a fried egg, casually asking, "Did you have fun at the gathering last night?" Leon stopped undoing his button, tilted his head slightly, and looked at me with a deep gaze, more intense than usual, as if he was surprised by my calmness. I continued eating, turning my head away, not looking at him again. His presence still lingered in the room, cold and indifferent. After a long while, he turned and left, not saying another word, as if he had lost the strength to argue with me. I lowered my head, absent-mindedly poking at the fried egg. I lost track of time, and we didn't meet again for the rest of the morning. I stayed in the piano room, my fingers moving across the keys, working on a new song. The keys, which I hadn't touched in so long, were nearly covered in dust. Before I met Leon, I was an unremarkable, rising singer-songwriter. As my career began to take off, he entered my world. My world gradually became surrounded by him, and in the constant doubt and anxiety, my creativity had been stifled for years. At that time, I thought love could overcome all obstacles. Who would have thought that was just the beginning of my suffering? At that time, how could I have known that sitting here, calmly playing the piano, I would realize that my relationship with him had already reached its end? Without realizing it, a familiar and distant song began to flow from my fingers. I paused slightly before I recognized it. It was the song Shimmering Waters, the one I had written for Leon. But it seemed like he had never listened to me play or sing it all the way through. The first time he came to my concert, he left halfway through the song. Later, I found out it was because he had seen on social media that Grace had been in a car accident, and he lost the patience to stay. The second time, on our 3rd anniversary, he said he was tired, and the piece I had prepared for him was abruptly cut short. The last time, on his birthday a year ago, he suddenly received an anonymous gift, and he was lost in thought for a long time. Only later did he realize that the gift had been from me. Suddenly, there was a faint sound at the door. The half-finished song stopped again. I instinctively turned around. Leon was standing in the doorway, half leaning against the threshold, his eyes half-lidded, deep in thought. When he heard the music stop, he looked up at me. His fingers, still holding a cigarette, sent out a wisp of smoke, adding to the coldness in his sharp eyes. He seemed to be waiting for me to speak, but I didn't say anything. So, he turned and walked out. After spending some time in the piano room, I decided to step outside for some fresh air. Before I knew it, I found myself at the amusement park. I looked up at the slowly rotating Ferris wheel, lost in thought. In one of the cabins, I saw the silhouette of a couple that looked quite beautiful. Such simple romance. Leon and I seemed to have never had this. I couldn't help but take out my phone and snap a photo of the couple's silhouette against the Ferris wheel in the distance. Trying to find a better angle, I shifted a little to the left. But I accidentally bumped into someone. Sorry. I quickly apologized, but before I could see the person clearly, I noticed the cold brown glasses on the boy's face had shifted, sliding down his nose. I hurriedly reached out to catch them, instinctively pushing the glasses back up his nose so they wouldn't fall. The motion was a little awkward, and when our eyes met, we both couldn't help but laugh. The boy had light blonde hair and glasses, but he didn't look at all scholarly. Instead, he looked like a character straight out of an anime, exuding a bit of wild energy. I smiled and turned my attention back to the Ferris wheel. As I raised my phone again, 2 surprising figures appeared on the screen. Leon showed up first. Grace was walking down from behind the Ferris wheel. When Leon casually looked up, his gaze met mine. My smile froze immediately. His eyes grew colder in an instant. Grace smiled and said, "Leon, let's go?" Leon didn't move. He stood under a tree, staring at me through the crowd, looking neither surprised nor caught off guard, just irritated and icy. It was as if he was waiting for me to come over and yell at him like a mad tiger. I turned to the blonde boy and said, "Come, let's continue taking pictures." The blonde boy tilted his head slightly and smiled. "Okay." Leon's gaze lingered on the blonde boy for a moment. After a brief pause, he walked away. We felt like two strangers who had shared a brief glance. I held my phone up for a while, but didn't take a single picture of the blonde boy. I couldn't help but wonder, when did Leon start changing? That condescending way he looked at me, as if he wanted to crush me into the dust. Probably, it had started when he began climbing the social ladder. I had gradually become an expendable accessory in his eyes. "Hey, didn't you say you were going to take a picture of me?" "Did you get it?" the blonde boy asked with a chuckle, his laughter growing louder. I fumbled with the phone and pressed the screen. Looks like it's not that bad." The blonde boy raised an eyebrow with a half-smile. "Do you like him?" I knew exactly who he was referring to. I silently put my phone down, thought for a moment, and then said, "I did, in the past." Soon, he would bring up divorce. I didn't care much for the next few days, the wasted effort in trying to hold on. I put my phone away and walked around for a bit, eventually finding myself standing outside the haunted house. I used to love things like this. But Leon never liked them, he thought they were boring. Now, I had bought a ticket myself and entered the haunted house. Inside, the staff would jump out occasionally to scare visitors. The halls were so dark it was hard to see much around me. Maybe I wasn't paying attention, or maybe I was just brave, but I walked through the entire place listening to the screams of others, while I moved forward like a robot, barely reacting. "Ah!" A scream came from another path, followed by hurried footsteps running toward me. I was afraid of being bumped into, so I quickly stepped aside to avoid the rush. Suddenly, a hand grabbed mine, pulling me forward. I was momentarily stunned, but instinctively followed. I couldn't keep up with the pace, and my feet got tangled. The person next to me quickly helped me steady myself, and my head bumped into their chest. I could feel their slightly erratic breath brushing against my face. "Leon? Where are you?" The person holding my hand froze. In the faint light, I saw him lower his head. It was a familiar face. He looked at me without saying anything, his eyes as cold as ice. I pulled my hand away. "I'm not following you." I turned around, and suddenly saw the blonde boy not far away. He had come over with a few friends and, upon seeing me, looked surprised and happy. I pointed at him, almost on impulse, and said, "I came with him." I didn't want to see Leon's expression. When I reached the blonde boy, I finally felt a slight awkwardness. The boy had an expression that was clearly trying to hold back laughter as he nodded. "All right, little lady, let's go," he said, pulling me out of the haunted house. I was slightly embarrassed, muttering an apology. "No problem," the blonde boy replied, "it's just a coincidence. Want to add me as a friend?" He then gave me a thoughtful look and said, "You look kind of familiar." I cleared my throat. Maybe I just have a very common face. "Really?" "Yeah." That night, Leon didn't come home again. At first, I felt lonely in the empty house, but gradually, I became accustomed to it. My best friend sent me a photo, angrily texting, "Guess who I ran into today?" Grace and Leon together, having dinner at a restaurant. "Eliza, do you know about this?" "I can't stand it. I have to tell you, this is too much. You two have been together for so many years, and even though it was never public, can they just pretend your marriage doesn't exist?" She was one of the few who knew that Leon and I were married. I clicked on the image she sent. In the photo, Grace and Leon were sitting at a round table. There was a clear blue flower vase on the table, reflecting the gentle sunlight. I zoomed in on the picture and could make out the steak on their plates. I paused for a moment, then slowly pulled my gaze away. He clearly didn't like steak. But maybe Grace did, and he was willing to change for her. Just like how, when I loved him, I naively thought I could change anything for him. "Eliza, what's wrong with you? Doesn't this bother you at all?" I lowered my head and replied, I don't mind anymore. This marriage, which was already beyond repair, had probably been doomed from the moment we walked into the wedding hall. I put on my headphones and continued working on my music. Time passed in a steady tick. As I immersed myself in my own world, I suddenly felt my headphones being lifted off. I turned in surprise. Leon was standing there, looking down at me. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "Delete it." "Delete what?" I froze. He narrowed his eyes, the darkness of his gaze deepening. It was then that I realized what he meant. I took my phone and showed it to him, feeling somewhat amused. "You think I secretly took pictures of you and Grace? You think I'm going to use these photos to confront you? Yell at you? Or wait for the right time to blackmail you?" I casually flipped through a few pages. "I didn't take a single picture, Leon." His eyes stayed fixed on the screen of my phone. I paused for a moment and glanced at the screen, realizing I had flipped to the photo of the blonde boy. I nonchalantly put my phone down, thinking about explaining, but then decided it wasn't necessary. How he thought of it didn't matter anymore. We had reached this point, it was just following the script. A few days later, he would bring up divorce. There was no need to explain who was with whom. What was there left to explain? Leon stood still for a long time, then straightened his back and turned to leave. I picked up my headphones to put them back on. Suddenly, he asked, "Who is he?" His voice was so low that I thought I might have misheard. When I looked up again, he had already walked out of the door. I paused for a moment, holding my headphones, when my phone suddenly vibrated with a message. The sender was listed as Oliver. It was the blonde boy. He had sent me a song with the message, "Really nice song, give it a listen." I checked the link, and the song was titled Water Reflection. The next few days, Leon continued staying out all night. I didn't ask a single question, nor did I send the usual messages asking when he would be back. In fact, I had no idea when or if he was coming home at all. I spent most of my days locked in the piano room, working on new songs. I had gradually gotten used to this kind of life and even started to like it. I thought, maybe he felt the same way. He must have enjoyed the freedom, no longer bothered by me. He could hold the hand of the girl he had missed out on when he was younger, the joy of something lost and then found. One night, I suddenly woke up in the middle of the night, a melody dancing in my mind. I quickly slipped on my slippers and ran to the piano room, trying to capture the melody that had come to me so suddenly. As I immersed myself in my world, I faintly heard a sound. I turned around. In the dim light of the early morning, Leon was standing in the doorway. I wasn't sure how long he had been there. This was the first time in many days that he had come home this early. I was startled, almost jumping up in surprise. My foot caught on something, and I tripped and fell to the floor. He immediately rushed over to me, trying to help me up. I avoided his hand and got up by myself. The hand that had once led me through countless paths froze in midair. I pushed my messy hair behind my ear, not really wanting to look at him. After 6 years of marriage, for the first time, I felt like I didn't really know him. We stood there, awkwardly, and I felt the distance between us. I didn't know what to say, so I chose silence. Leon was silent too. I walked around him and left the room. A few days later, one night I fell asleep in a daze. For some reason, as soon as I closed my eyes, I began dreaming about the past with Leon. I dreamt of a snowy day, where he held my hand as we walked through the thick snow, our footprints trailing behind us. In the days of our infatuation, I had made him a birthday cake, watching him blow out the candles. The flickering light cast shadows on his long lashes, turning them into butterfly wings that fluttered softly in my heart. At our wedding, the dazzling light shone down on him, while I wore a white bridal gown, feeling as if I were in a dream. He held a bouquet of roses, his beauty surpassing the wild blooms of flowers around us. My fingers slipped the wedding ring onto his hand. Suddenly, the world around us faded to black and white. Leon's smile disappeared, and the candles in the hall were snuffed out by a cold breeze. The roses in his hand, one by one, fell to the floor. I suddenly woke up, tossing in bed. My phone dropped to the floor with a loud thud, its screen lighting up. My forehead was covered in cold sweat. When I opened my eyes and saw someone sitting by my bed, my breath caught in my throat. It was still dark, but he had come back. He smelled of strong alcohol. When he saw I was awake, he lowered his head to look at me. His eyes, perhaps clouded by the alcohol, were a bit moist, and his voice sounded hoarse. "Eliza, do you not care about me at all anymore?" I sat up, feeling confused by his words. After a brief silence, I finally asked, "Have I not been good enough to you?" I bent down to grab my phone. "You don't like it when I ask where you are, so I didn't ask. I didn't ask what you and Grace were doing. When I saw you both, I pretended I didn't see you. Even though I thought you probably didn't want to see me, so I locked myself in my room. Is there anything else you're unhappy with?" I blew lightly on the screen, which unlocked immediately. It had been days since I last opened my phone. The page was still on the message from Oliver. Leon saw it and his gaze darkened slightly. "Who is he?" His tone was much more rigid this time. "Is it because of him?" He suddenly grew more stubborn. "Because of him, you don't care about me anymore?" He reached for my phone, but I pulled it away, and before I could stop myself, the words slipped out, "Aren't you back to discuss the divorce?" "I'm ready," I added. His hand froze, and his eyes stared at me, wide and fixed, as if I had just said something that left him utterly speechless. After a long silence, he let go of my phone, his alcohol-induced haze clearing a bit. "I haven't agreed to it, Eliza," he said, his voice calm, like the silence before a storm. I asked, almost in disbelief, "Why?" The question seemed to anger him. He suddenly stood up, his eyes flaring with intensity. "Have you been waiting for a divorce this whole time?" "Yes," I said slowly, not in a hurry to answer. "And I have plenty of reasons. Grace is back, isn't she? You've never let her go, and I should have known this by now. You're willing to change for her, but you've never done that for me. So clearly, you like her more than you like me. These past 2 years, you've grown more and more impatient with me. We fight all the time, and it's obvious we're not right for each other anymore. And finally," I lowered my voice, "I feel like I don't like you anymore." He shuddered, as if my words struck him like a blow. Without another word, he turned and left my room. His footsteps were quick, as if by walking away, he could escape the last words I had said. He spent the rest of the night on the balcony, smoking. From that day on, Leon never brought up divorce again. For many days, he stayed at home. One morning when I woke up and went into the living room, I saw that he had made breakfast. I suddenly felt so uninterested and turned to leave. I heard footsteps behind me. A necklace with purple gemstones was handed to me. I didn't take it, I just found it amusing and turned to look at him. Leon didn't look at me, his face slightly turned away, speaking in a low voice, "It's for you." I pushed it away. "I don't like it. I don't need it." "Don't you remember what today is?" he asked. "I don't remember." He suddenly tightened his grip on the necklace. I returned to my room. Today was our 6th wedding anniversary, but what did that matter? When I remembered, he didn't want to remember. When I wanted to forget, he insisted on reminding me. I felt restless and left the house. After walking a few steps, a black car pulled up beside me. I kept walking, but it continued to follow me. I couldn't hold it in any longer and stopped. Leon rolled down the window. "Get in." I looked at him for a few seconds, then got into the car. What else does he want to do? I started to lose track of it. Leon drove me to an island. The sky was a dreamy blend of blue and pink, birds circling, and the air was thick with the scent of the gem-blue sea. I got out of the car. On the island, there was a winding path, perfect for cycling around the island to enjoy the scenery. Leon parked his bike beside me. He was waiting for me to get on. He was doing what I used to do. Years ago, it was on this very island that I confessed to him. Back then, I nervously cycled beside him and confessed my feelings amidst the romantic sea breeze. I had been so tense that I ended up falling onto the sand. He pulled me out of the sand, trying to hide his smile as he brushed the sand from my hair. But now, standing here again, I felt nothing but distance and strangeness. It felt as distant as a memory from a past life. I pretended not to recognize the sea. Leon observed me closely, trying to read my expression for any sign of emotion. But perhaps he was disappointed. His phone rang, vibrating on the table, and the screen lit up showing Grace as the caller. He hesitated, not answering. I took a few steps back and turned, sneering, "Your crush is calling." Over the next month or so, Leon appeared in front of me more often than he had in the past 6 months. He had always been a good cook, though he rarely used to cook. Lately, however, he'd been cooking more often. When he brought food to me, I looked at my phone screen and said, "Sorry, I just ordered takeout." It was like we were roommates living together. At night, when he lay beside me, I grabbed my blanket and moved to the sofa in the living room. When I was composing music, he would sit quietly beside me, never disturbing me. Sometimes, when I turned to look at him in the shifting light, I would almost mistake him for the Leon I had known before we got married. One sunny day, my desk was bathed in sunlight. I was listening to the new song I had just recorded, wearing my headphones, while Leon was watering the plants next to me. He lowered his head slightly, the stray strands of his black hair falling to partially cover his eyes. In the shadow of his face, his features looked deeply handsome. The white shirt he wore was drenched in the gentle summer sunlight, making him seem as soft and gentle as a cool breeze under the moon. The way he looked right now reminded me of how he was when we were deeply in love, back when he was still a good person. Without thinking, I took off my headphones. "Leon." Leon paused in his task of watering the plants, and suddenly turned to look at me. This was the first time in many days that I had spoken to him first. I could even see a hint of hope in his eyes. I said, "Let's divorce. Stop dragging this out for no reason." The sound of water dripping from the watering can broke the silence. He seemed not to have heard me and turned his head away. I put down my headphones and spoke seriously. "Don't you think you're acting strange? You like Grace. I already understand that, and I'm prepared to move on. But why do you keep acting like this? Stop creating this atmosphere that makes me think you still like me, okay?" He said, "What if it's not an illusion?" I was stunned for a moment. He looked at me again, and his words seemed heavy and difficult. "I realized I can leave her, but I can't accept not having you around." I smiled a little. "But I can't accept having you around anymore. What's the point of staying together by force? You know that you can never get over Grace, and pretending it doesn't exist doesn't make it disappear. And I hate the way you've been treating me recently. Looking down at me, being condescending and arrogant, as if I were just an ant, meant to stay forever at your feet. I can't forgive you, and honestly, it disgusts me. You think I've changed so quickly, but you've changed even faster. You've forgotten what you were like before you made it big." Back then, he had been humble and polite, never looking down on me with a sense of superiority. Leon's movements slowed as he watered the plants. I added, "And besides, I don't like you anymore. I've fallen for someone else." "Really?" The watering can dropped suddenly, and he turned around sharply, his eyes full of shock. Fearing he might not believe me, I pulled out my phone and called Oliver. He picked up quickly, his voice bright with a smile. "Baby, miss me?" I replied, "I miss you so much." Leon clenched his fists, his fingers trembling. After a moment, he let go in despair. I took off my wedding ring and threw it at him. "It's over. There's no such thing as a loyal, undying love that can be custom-made in advance." Of course, later I personally thanked Oliver. To show my appreciation, I even transferred him a small sum of money. Oliver laughed and leaned across the table, then took the money. "Thanks for the tip. You're really generous." I scratched my head awkwardly. "It's nothing. Thank you for agreeing to help me." Coincidentally, my best friend ran into us on the way. She pulled me aside, her eyes wide. "You know Oliver? Why have I never heard you mention him before?" I stared at her blankly. She hit me on the head. "How can you not know him? How many wealthy Oliver families are there in this city? He's the only son of the Alexander family." Suddenly, I remembered the way he had been smiling when I sent him money. I felt my ears burn with embarrassment. I knew Leon would eventually agree to the divorce. This was his breaking point. The day we finalized the divorce, it was still a bright, sunny day. But Leon seemed to be living in a world of snow. After we completed the paperwork, before we left, he stopped me. "Eliza." I paused. His voice was husky, quieter than usual. "When did you stop liking me completely?" To him, my indifference had come too suddenly. For years, I had been passionate, always revolving around him. How could I just stop liking him all of a sudden? He seemed to accept it even less than I did. He stepped closer. "Was it when Grace came back?" I thought for a moment, then answered, "It was the moment you started trying to keep me." I knew Grace was his first love. If he had chosen to reignite his old flame with Grace and divorce me, I would probably have been angry and resentful, but I might not have been able to let him go right away. After all, I could still lie to myself that he was a deeply affectionate person, just that his affection wasn't for me. But the moment he tried to hold on to me, that's when I knew he wasn't worth it. When I loved him, he loved me less than he loved Grace. But when I decided to stop loving him, he suddenly seemed to love me more than he loved Grace. What did that mean? I couldn't help but wonder, if we ever reconciled and I gave him my all again, would he regret not being with Grace? He was like a boat swaying in the wind, drawn to whichever way the waves were strongest. When one side was about to be lost, he'd swing back to the other side. I couldn't accept living in that kind of uncertainty again, even before I had fully started anew. I was exhausted and disgusted. After the divorce, I spent about half a year focusing on my new album, rarely paying attention to what was happening in the outside world. The new album became even more popular than I expected, and I gained a small but noticeable following. My best friend was excited and sent me a message, "Eliza, when you have your concert, please save me a front row ticket." Oliver also asked for a ticket. "I'm a longtime fan, you can't be stingy with me." I lifted my head from my desk. Winter passed, and summer arrived. It was already the peak of summer. During these days, I occasionally heard news about him from my friends. They said that Leon hadn't gotten back together with Grace. I heard that Grace had proposed to him, and everyone had assumed it was a done deal, but unexpectedly, he rejected her. In front of so many people, Grace's face looked awful, and when she left, her eyes were red from crying. My best friend, a little gleeful, said, "Who would have thought the breakup would be this ugly?" She got what she deserved. I didn't really care about any of this. A few years later, my next concert began. Before the show started, my best friend came to cheer me on. "Eliza, don't be scared. You've done this before, this time there are just more people, you've got this." I wasn't nervous at all, but I still smiled and gave her a high five. Oliver was also there, holding a pile of support sticks, at least a dozen, nearly covering his face. He grinned and said, "I can't just take your tickets for free, right? Look, I'm one person, but I'm like 10 supporters." Seeing him looking so ridiculous, I couldn't help but laugh. He tugged his slightly red ears and ran off. Everything went smoothly. Later, halfway through the concert, I vaguely saw a familiar face among the lights. I froze for a second, then quickly forced myself to focus on the performance again. It must have been a mistake. The success of the new album also brought renewed attention to my earlier song, "Water Surface," which became a little popular again. When I stepped out of the venue, a crowd of excited fans surrounded me, shouting and cheering. As I scanned the crowd, I caught sight of Leon standing in a corner. His tall figure was hard to miss, even though he was dressed in simple black, trying to blend into the background. He was standing in the corner, completely out of place in the lively crowd. Someone with a microphone asked me, "I heard that 'Water Surface' is a song you wrote for someone you liked. Is that true?" I didn't deny it. I once liked them. "Why did you choose this title?" "Because, back then, I felt that when you like someone, your heart is like a lake stirred by the wind. There's always a subtle ripple of emotions." Leon looked over at me just as our eyes met. I had imagined such a scene before. I thought that if he ever came to one of my concerts again, I would run straight to him in front of everyone and throw myself into his arms. I'd want to shout to the world that I loved him. The microphone was pressed closer to me. "You just said 'once liked.' Why is it in the past now? Now, I calmly shifted my gaze away from his face and smiled politely at the interviewer, because that lake has turned into stagnant water. It's dirty, it stinks, and it's rotten. It can never ripple with clear, gentle waves again. My best friend and Oliver were calling for me from behind. Eliza. I ran toward them, coming,